People don't say this enough, but the way you handle your privacy says more about you than anything you post online. And in a world where everyone is constantly sharing, performing, and documenting their lives for attention, a man who chooses to stay off social media carries a different kind of energy. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it is powerful. Keeping your life private isn't about hiding, it's about protecting what matters. It's about choosing peace over performance, clarity over noise, and real connections over empty validation. And whether people admit it or not, this quiet approach to life unsettles many because it's rare and because it's strong. Some assume a private man is mysterious. Others think he's closed off. But the truth is far more interesting. A man who doesn't put his whole life online is usually someone who understands his own value. He doesn't chase approval. He doesn't need strangers to confirm his identity. He doesn't measure his life by likes, comments, or reactions. He focuses on what's real: his work, his relationships, his peace of mind, and his personal growth. And that alone sets him apart. This video isn't about glorifying silence or criticizing those who enjoy sharing online. It's about understanding the deeper psychology of men who choose the quieter path. The men who don't announce every move. The men who don't broadcast every achievement. The men who seem to live outside the noise, even when the world expects everyone to be constantly visible. Because there's a truth about these men that many overlook. And it explains why they're more grounded, more selective, and sometimes more attractive than they even realize. Before anything else, let's talk about the power of a quiet life. A quiet life doesn't mean a boring life. It means a life that isn't lived for validation, and that alone changes a man's entire presence. When a man keeps his world off social media, he moves differently. He isn't attached to constant updates, opinions, comparisons, or pressure to entertain strangers. His mind becomes clearer. His emotions become steadier. His decisions come from what feels right, not what will look good on a screen. A quiet life gives him something social media rarely does: mental space. Space to think, space to rest, space to focus on what actually matters. Most people underestimate what that does to a person. When you're not being watched all the time, you stop performing. You stop editing your life for an audience, you start living for yourself. And that is where real self-respect grows. There's also a certain peace in knowing that not everyone has access to your story. Not everyone needs to know where you are, who you're with, or what you're doing. That kind of privacy builds a sense of personal control that many men don't realize they're missing until they step away from the noise. Imagine a man who wakes up, takes care of his responsibilities, spends time with the people he cares about, and ends his day without posting a single thing. He isn't thinking about reactions or trying to impress anyone. His focus is on what's happening in front of him, not the digital version of it. Over time, this creates a quiet strength, the kind people feel more than they can explain. A quiet life also protects his energy. When you keep your world small, you avoid unnecessary drama, competition, and expectations. You're not influenced by what everyone else is doing or achieving. You stay in your lane, and that alone removes so much pressure. And here's something many overlook. A quiet man often sees more. He pays attention better. He listens better. He thinks deeper. Without the constant noise of everyone's opinions, he understands himself more clearly. The power of a quiet life is simple. It allows a man to be present, grounded, and fully in control of his own world, without needing an audience to confirm it. 2. Why privacy builds inner strength. Privacy isn't just the act of keeping things to yourself. It's a form of discipline. It's choosing what deserves your attention and what doesn't. And when a man practices this consistently, something powerful happens inside him. He becomes stronger. Not louder, not harder, stronger. There is a quiet kind of strength that comes from not letting everyone into your world. When you keep your personal life protected, you give yourself a chance to grow without pressure, without noise, and without comparison. You're not living for applause. You're not waiting for someone to validate your decisions. You create your own sense of direction. Privacy builds inner strength because it forces you to rely on yourself. When you're not constantly sharing, you start reflecting. When you reflect, you see your patterns. And when you see your patterns, you develop self-awareness. Most people don't realize how much energy they lose by keeping their lives open to the world. Every post invites opinions. Every update invites judgment. Every detail you share becomes something someone else can twist, question, or misunderstand. A private man isn't carrying that weight. His life is lighter because his boundaries are clear. And that clarity changes how he moves. He becomes better at saying no. He becomes selective with the people he lets in. He becomes harder to manipulate. Why? Because you can't easily influence a man who isn't seeking attention or approval. A private man doesn't need to broadcast his achievements to feel accomplished. He doesn't need to show his relationship to feel secure. He doesn't need to announce his goals to stay committed. He knows who he is, and that inner certainty becomes his strength. Privacy also protects a man emotionally. When you don't expose your vulnerabilities to the world, you give yourself room to handle them properly. You process things privately, with honesty and patience, instead of reacting impulsively because you feel watched. And here's something many overlook. A private man has a deeper sense of identity because he isn't shaped by trends, opinions, or social expectations. He isn't comparing himself to strangers online. He isn't living through the filtered lives of others. He stays grounded in his own reality. That's why privacy builds inner strength. It teaches you to trust yourself, to value your own judgment, and to protect your peace at all costs. A man who understands this doesn't just live quietly, he lives with intention. 3. How staying offline protects your relationships. Keeping your relationship off social media doesn't mean you're hiding anything. It means you value what you have enough to protect it. And in a world where everyone watches, judges, compares, and comments on everything, that protection matters more than people realize. The truth is, relationships grow differently when they're not being observed. There's more space to communicate honestly, to work through misunderstandings quietly, and to build intimacy without wondering how it will look online. When a connection isn't constantly documented, it becomes stronger because both people are focused on each other, not the audience. Social media has a way of turning personal moments into performances. Little things suddenly feel like they need to be shared or proven. Instead of enjoying a relationship, people start managing it as if it were content. That pressure slowly changes the dynamic. Expectations rise. Comparisons appear. Doubts grow from things that were never meant to be seen. When a man chooses to keep his relationships offline, he protects the bond from all that outside influence. No unsolicited opinions, no silent competition with other couples, no pressure to appear a certain way, just to fit into the curated world of online perfection. Privacy gives the relationship a chance to develop naturally. It removes noise, it removes temptation. It removes the need to explain or justify anything to anyone. And that creates a sense of safety. A safe relationship isn't one that never faces problems. It's one where problems are addressed privately, respectfully, and without outside interference. When two people handle things between them, instead of turning it into a public discussion, they build trust and emotional maturity. Keeping things off social media also helps maintain healthier boundaries. Not every moment needs to be shared. Not every disagreement needs to be posted. When the relationship is protected, both partners feel more valued, more respected, and more secure. They know that what they share with each other stays between them. In a quiet relationship, there's more honesty, more presence, more depth, because nothing is being done for show. Nothing is being exaggerated to impress anyone. Everything is real, and both people feel it. That's how staying offline protects your relationships. It keeps them grounded, it keeps them intimate, and it keeps them free from the distractions that break so many connections today. 4. The hidden confidence of a low-profile man. A man who lives quietly doesn't need to talk about confidence. He carries it without announcing it. There's something unmistakable about someone who chooses to stay off the spotlight, not because he's avoiding life, but because he has nothing to prove. He isn't chasing validation or trying to display a version of himself for others to admire. His confidence comes from a different place, from within. When a man doesn't need public attention to feel valuable, it shows a level of emotional security that many underestimate. He doesn't rely on reactions, compliments, or engagement to confirm anything about who he is. His self-worth isn't tied to a screen, to numbers, or to what strangers think. This kind of grounding is rare and it can't be faked. You can sense it in how he speaks, how he moves, and how he handles situations without looking around for approval. A low-profile man is not insecure. He simply understands that confidence doesn't require an audience. He knows his strengths, he knows his flaws, and he doesn't feel the need to advertise either one. There's freedom in that kind of self-knowledge. Freedom to grow quietly. Freedom to improve without pressure. Freedom to be himself without adjusting his identity to fit into trends or expectations. What many people don't realize is that genuine confidence is not loud. It's not flashy. It's not constantly expressed for others to notice. Real confidence is calm. It's steady. It's consistent, and that's exactly why low-profile men often stand out without trying. When others are busy seeking attention, the man who remains centered becomes naturally more intriguing. This type of confidence also reflects in the way he treats others. He listens without feeling the need to dominate the conversation. He doesn't interrupt to show how much he knows. He doesn't rush to prove his worth. A secure man has patience. He has presence. He has the ability to let things unfold without forcing them. And that alone makes people trust him more. Staying off social media also means he isn't constantly comparing himself to anyone else. He isn't chasing trends or competing with strangers. His confidence comes from his actions, his mindset, his character, not from outside noise. That's why he can remain stable when others are easily shaken. His identity isn't up for negotiation. The hidden confidence of a low-profile man is not about being mysterious. It's about being rooted, strong inside, unaffected, authentic. Someone who doesn't need the world to see him in order to know exactly who he is. 5. Why private men are often misunderstood. Men who keep their lives private are often misread by others. Not because there's something wrong with them, but because most people today are used to constant exposure. When someone doesn't share everything, the world starts filling in the gaps with assumptions. And those assumptions almost always miss the truth. A private man can easily be labeled as distant, uninterested, difficult to read, or even emotionally unavailable. But in reality, many private men are the exact opposite. They feel deeply, they think carefully, and they choose their inner circle with intention. They value peace, loyalty, and genuine connection, things that don't require an audience to exist. The misunderstanding happens because many people are uncomfortable with what they cannot see. When you don't post your life, others assume you don't have one. When you don't broadcast your emotions, they assume you don't feel anything. When you don't share your plans, they assume you're hiding something. The truth is simpler. A private man isn't hiding. He's protecting. He protects his relationships from noise. He protects his goals from negativity. He protects his mind from distractions. This world expects access. People are so used to knowing everything about everyone that when a man refuses to participate in that culture, he stands out. And standing out often invites misunderstanding. But his silence is not confusion. It's clarity. He knows what deserves attention and what doesn't. A private man isn't antisocial. He's selective. He isn't cold. He's careful. He isn't secretive. He's intentional. These qualities are often overlooked because they don't match the loudness of modern life. People forget that some men build their strength quietly. They focus on their work, their growth, their responsibilities, and the connections that actually matter. They don't feel the need to announce every move because they're not chasing validation. They're building stability. And that makes some people uncomfortable. There's a certain discomfort in facing someone who cannot be easily read or influenced. A man who doesn't overshare becomes harder to control, harder to judge, and harder to categorize. That quiet independence is powerful, and not everyone knows how to interpret it. But being misunderstood doesn't mean he's wrong. It simply means he's different. He moves with intention, not impulse. He chooses depth over attention. And even if the world misreads him, he remains grounded in who he is. A private man doesn't need everyone to understand his silence. He only needs to be at peace with himself. And that's something many people never learn to do. Some people will never understand why a man chooses privacy, and that's fine. Not everyone is meant to have access to your world. But if there's something you should take from this entire message, it's this. A quiet life is not a weak life. It's a disciplined one. And discipline will always outlast attention. And here's the controversial truth that many won't admit. A man becomes far more attractive the moment the world can't figure him out. In a culture obsessed with visibility, mystery is power. Independence is power. Privacy is power. Most people are not ready to hear that, but it doesn't make it any less true. A private man doesn't lose anything by staying off social media. He gains clarity, strength, and emotional control. He becomes harder to manipulate, harder to distract, and harder to shake. That kind of presence is rare now, and whether people admit it or not, it's respected. If you're someone who lives quietly, or someone who's learning to pull away from the noise, I want to hear from you. Share your story. Tell me what parts of your privacy you protect the most. Tell me what you struggle with, or what you're proud of, or what you've learned from living outside the spotlight. I'll be reading your comments, and I'll reach out the same way I always do, honestly, thoughtfully, and with the intention of helping you grow. Because this isn't just a channel. It's a place where we understand each other, where we speak openly, and where we learn to move through the world with strength and purpose. So leave your experience below, share this video with someone who needs it, and stay close. Because the next one will open your eyes even more than this one did.